Following on from my videos on how to build up your recurve strength and how to test your recurve strength, I've had lots of feedback and lots of questions. I've also been really pleased that so many of you have done the test yourself and then put the results in the comments. I've been really impressed with how strong many of you are. It's clear to me you're putting in the work, you're taking your shooting progress seriously, and thanks for the communication, because I like to know what people want. And one of the questions I've had is, it's easy for me to talk about training, and I know if you don't come from a position where you've been a part of a national team or a professional team, maybe my idea of training is not the same idea as yours training. And I know most of you are not professional athletes. So what I'm going to do today is this is literally the training plan. Let me get that right. This is literally the training plan to the best of my memory of what I was doing when I qualified first at the Recurve World Championships in indoors 2005. So I was working at that time with a full-time job, and this is how my training fitted in around that, because I think for most of you this will be the best example. Okay, so I'm going to talk through my plan for the week and show you pretty much how my life week to week was. Of course, there's always variations, but majority of the time, athletes have quite a consistent life. You know, there wasn't a lot of variability in there. So let's take a look. So broadly, this was my plan for most weeks, broken down into four real categories that take up the majority of my time. That's blue for rest, gray for travel, red for work, that's employment, and gold for archery and the stuff that we live for and the reason why we're doing all this. And also there's a little red boxes there, that's the bow training that I used to do. Now looking at the beginning of the week, you can see that really I'm waking up on Monday morning, normally exhausted, and I'm just going straight to work. But then as soon as I finish work, I'm going to the archery club, and on most of these evening sessions, weather permitting, club permitting, I'm trying to shoot between 100 and 150 arrows. Now, if we're in the outdoor season and the weather is good, that's normally no problem at all. If it's the indoor season, sometimes I can shoot my entire evening, and getting off 100 arrows really does take a lot of work, because I'm not even shooting 3 arrow ends. I wouldn't do 3 arrow ends. I try and shoot 6 arrow ends at least. I try and shoot as long as I can before all the other club members wanted to go and collect. Or of course, if I was on my own, there was a few years in there, I had my own training venue, and I would shoot ends of 12 arrows, because that is really good for their endurance, and we're there to practice shooting, not practice walking backwards and forwards. Then I move on to the other days, and typically the bow exercises from the video that I made a couple of weeks ago that looks like this, I like to do them in the morning as far away from any shooting time as I can. Because when you've finished doing 10 or 15 minutes of bow drills, or even more if you can, which is great, you need maximum recovery time. So for me, I either recommend these doing in the morning if you're then going to uni or to work, so you've got that 8-hour recovery, or do them at night just before you fall into bed. But for me, if I'm training in the evenings, it's a good chance for me to keep a little bit of strength training in the morning. I've got the day to recover, and then I'm ready to do my quality training in the evening. On Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I was finishing shooting at the club and then going to the gym. Now, admittedly, I was getting to the gym very late. It's not ideal, but when you've got a full-time job, when else do you fit it in? If you've got the type of job where you can fit it in your lunch break, hallelujah, that would be perfect. Or if you're a bit more of a morning person, and I'm not, but if you're a morning person and you can do the gym before you go to work, again, fantastic. Because like I said, you've then got a full day of work, you've got a full 8 hours for your body to recover before the quality training in the evening. So there are your choices. You've got to push it to one end or the other. But yeah, it's not ideal. Life as an amateur athlete is tough. And now I really want to talk about the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now this is the part of the week that for me, nearly every weekend, probably 90% of the time, I'd finish work on Friday and then I would have to drive somewhere. Now, of course, that varies on where your training center is, where competitions are. But for me, living where I was in Ipswich, if I was driving to the training center, that was 3 hours away. And most competitions were 1 or 2 hours away. So most of the time, even though I wouldn't call it a rest day, Friday for me, I didn't get to train because most of the time I'd finish work, drive off to the competition. So if it's one of the rare weekends I'm at home, I would go to the club and do probably 2 sessions, probably try and shoot 150 arrows in the morning and 150 arrows in the evening to try and get up to 300. If I've got the time and everything is going well, maybe I'll even do 400. Of course, if you're doing tuning or working on a particular piece of technique, then that can drop down to 100 or 200. You know, it just depends what you're doing. But on a general day, if you're just shooting, working on form without anything that's absorbing time, when you have a complete day, you need to do 300 arrows plus really. And at a later date, we'll do a video on arrow volumes, about how many arrows you're shooting, and you'll realize that compared with some people, 300 arrows a day is nothing. But for an amateur archer trying to hold down a job, let alone trying to hold down a family, 300 arrows is a really productive day. So if it's a competition weekend or a training camp weekend, and I know I'm lucky coming from doing my career in Great Britain, I was so lucky that nearly every weekend I could get a competition in somewhere. And over the summer months, that would be my choice. Nothing keeps me sharper personally than being competition fit. And I see this too often in athletes. They're just not doing enough. Doing one competition every 2 months, typically speaking, is not enough to get competition fit. And that's getting comfortable in your environment, getting fit with the day is just so long and so draining. So even at a competition, I may have shot only 100 arrows, but it's taken all day. There's been so much standing around, so much waiting, so much bad weather, so much rain, that it just takes it out of you. So being competition fit is incredibly important. But the consequence of that is, as you can see on this planner, the majority of the time, Sunday evening is spent driving back from the competition, driving back from the training camp, and I'm probably not getting home until 10 or 11 o'clock, crashing into bed, exhausted, and then on Monday, it starts all over again. So this is my personal schedule to the best of my memory, and I commonly see this reflected with many athletes who are amateurs, or even if they're like semi-professional, if you still have to go to university, you can see you have a plan, something like this, to try and make the most of your day. But I know the first time I was told what professional training is by their American coach, Don Rabska. He looked at he was working for Hoyt Easton at the time, and I sent in my training logs, and he just said, you need to sit down and listen to this, which, considering we were sending these messages by fax, was a bit of a joke. But he was like, you're just not doing enough. I typically went to the club, warmed up, and then I would shoot a competition round. So in the winter, I would just warm up, shoot an 18-meter fetus, so I'd just shoot, not 18-meter world archery, showing my age there. I'd shoot the qualifying round, 60 arrows, shoot a bit more and go home. I just was not doing enough. And he was the first person to really lay out to me what proper world-class training was like. And I promise, what I'm showing here is just scratching the surface on being an amateur. I will make another video on what full-time professionals do, and some of it will shock you. But me getting that first chat from Don Rabska, honestly, that is a key turning point in my career. And like a few months, 4 months after that chat with him, I delivered Great Britain's first championship team bronze medal that we'd had in 10 years, because I was probably shooting 3 times as much, I was much more focused, and I saw the results. I got a 5th individually, we got a bronze in the team round, and like I say, my country hadn't had a championship medal in 10 years in target archery, so it was a significant improvement. But it's hard. As you can see, this doesn't leave you a lot of time for family, this doesn't leave you a lot of time if you have a bit of a hungry job, a job that requires overtime sometimes, a job that requires weekends or evenings, trying to have a job like that and work your way to being a professional archer, it's probably not going to happen. You know, I now appreciate how I only gave 38 hours a week to my job. As soon as it became 4:30, I was out the door and I didn't give my job a second thought. And I now realize, now I'm an adult and I've had many other jobs, that is a luxury that the vast majority of jobs do not have. As a coach, there's no way I could have lived to that schedule. It was brutal, but I know I never gave a thought to my job before work or after work. I just went there, done the job to my best of my abilities, and then I clocked off and I was gone. I never went in the evening, never went at the weekends. And because of that, I could focus my time, build up my performance, and then work towards getting on the national team in Great Britain, getting lottery funding, and then I was able to turn professional, turn full-time, and then we had a totally different schedule. And we'll talk about that next time, okay? All right, good shooting.